you're new to the modeling world, how do you know which model agencies you should apply to? How do you know if, when you get interest from modeling agencies, they're not just trying to scam you? Today, I'll break down the most common red flags that we might see when we're searching for agency representation. My name is Carly. I am a model represented in the New York and Boston markets, and today I'll discuss why it's important to be picky with which model agency you choose. I'll talk about ways to properly research an agency to vet them. I'll talk about fees you should be prepared to pay and to whom, and I'll also discuss other miscellaneous tips on how to properly vet an agency. Picking the right agency is super important to your development as a model. Most agency contracts are around 2 to 3 years, and so if you're with the wrong agency, this means you're 2 to 3 years without development, without the correct mentorship, and potentially without bookings to further accelerate your career. Not only that, if you're represented by an agency, that most likely means that you can't find representation from another agency. Depending on your contract, if you're signed with an agency, you might not be able to find additional representation, at least in the very same region. In the worst case scenario, if you sign with a scam agency, this most likely means that they make their money from the models, not from the booking fee from both the client and the model. An agency contract usually goes for roughly 2 to 3 years, but if you can't find representation for 2 to 3 years, that means you have the freedom to continuously apply to agencies every 3 to 6 months. You have the freedom to try to book work on your own, to collaborate with photographers, hair and makeup artists, stylists, to build your portfolio so that you can get the reputable agencies. When you're applying to these agencies, there's 3 main ways I like to use to determine whether an agency is most likely legitimate or not. The first being website, second being social media, and third being models.com. As far as their website, many agencies have on their website the roster of models that they represent. And so you can see what types of models they represent. You can see hopefully which jobs that these models have booked. A lot of times agencies will link the Instagrams of the models as well. So I like to look at the Instagrams and see on the models' Instagrams what type of work they're booking, what types of collabs they're working on, and just see whether that model's work is the type of work I would want to do as well. So next is social media. Many agencies will have quite large followings, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're legitimate. I feel like it's quite well known that lots of agencies will buy social media followers, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But if their social media following is all that they have going for them, then that's when something might be a little fishy. More importantly, look at what these agency social media sites are posting. If they're mostly posting test shoot photos, which are collaborations between a model and photographer, where the model doesn't make any money, that could mean that the agency isn't booking that many jobs. So when you're on the grid, you want to look for any brand names, brand tags. All of that means that they're probably booking jobs. So just because an agency buys their Instagram followers doesn't mean that they're not legitimate, but rather it's if they have a lot of followers, not a lot of likes, and aren't posting a lot of jobs that their models are booking. That's when you might want to raise a red flag. Models.com doesn't have 100% of all reputable agencies, but if a model agency markets themselves as a model agency and they have a huge following on social media, I would expect them to be on models.com. Many of the big name agencies are on models.com. I also find a lot of smaller mother agencies that are on models.com as well. I think it's a great filter in terms of checking if an agency is more or less legitimate. There will be some startup costs when you start your modeling career. If you're signed with an agency, normal fees include paying for website hosting, so that's your portfolio on the agency's website. You'll probably have to pay a yearly fee for that. That ranges from $200 to $500. I have heard of reputable agencies charging $800 for that, which is quite steep. But if you want to be represented, then sometimes that's what you have to do. You'll have to pay for comp cards. So comp cards are essentially a model's business card. It's like a maybe 5x7 of the best photos that you have taken. I have paid, I think, $45 to $50 for 15 comp cards. And for that, my agency referred me to a printer and I just paid the printer directly. You'll also have to pay for a portfolio because this is what the agency will use to market you to potential clients. For a starter portfolio, you'll probably want 3 different outfits with 3 different backgrounds just to show the types of photos that you can take. And depending on where you live, this might range between $500 to $1,000. That's say for a photographer, and then if you want a stylist or a hair and makeup, that will be maybe $100 or $200 more for the hair and makeup artists. Sometimes a photographer will be the stylist too. All in all, you shouldn't have to pay more than $1,200 for a starter portfolio. And $1,200 is pretty expensive for New York City. So if you're not in New York, you should be expected to pay significantly less than that. So here are the fees that you shouldn't have to pay for. If they charge for you to be represented by the agency, that's a huge red flag. They might justify it by saying, we're charging you this fee to be on our roster because we have to market you to clients. But that's the job of an agent, which is to market their talent to clients. And when the talent books the job, the agent gets the 20% commission from both the client and they take 20% from the model's paycheck. If the agency pressures you to use their in-house photographer, that's a red flag as well. Agencies might have in-house photographers, but you should feel empowered to use whichever photographer you'd like, and they should also support you in that. Some agencies might pressure you to sign up for the classes. So they might say something along the lines of, you have a lot of potential as a model, but in order for us to feel comfortable marketing you out to clients, we want you to take our modeling class. Classes in general shouldn't be required. I know there are many new models who have booked jobs without ever taking classes. This is a little bit of a gray area because I have heard of legitimate agencies hosting classes, but in general, I do feel like they shouldn't be necessary. And it's a bit of a red flag if they do pressure you to take classes before they sign you. And I have some miscellaneous tips on specific situations or things that you might want to consider doing before you sign a contract. If you have a contract in hand, you probably already have spoken with the agent that will be representing you. But if you haven't, definitely make sure you have either an in-person conversation or a Zoom call with them. You'll want to understand very clearly the types of jobs your agent envisions that you will book. So essentially, how will you make money for the agent and for yourself? You'll want to know what's expected from yourself and from them. You'll want to know what types of fees you'll have to pay and how frequently. So for example, the website fee I mentioned. Are you expected to pay that up front, or will the agency take that out of your first paycheck? Reach out to other models who are represented by this agency to understand their experience with this agency. I probably say this in every single modeling video I make, but this is a super underrated tip. There's no better reference than people who are already in a professional relationship with this agency. You can ask them what types of jobs they've booked, how frequently they book in general, or how frequently they get castings. That gives you a sense of how the agency works and whether they might be the best choice for you. When you're applying to agencies, they will never ask for nude photos of you. So if you ever get that type of request, then that's a huge red flag. Once you get signed though, if you want to model for lingerie or for swimsuit, you will have to add those types of photos into your portfolio. Some agencies might ask you to submit swimsuit digitals, but even now, I feel like the trend is much more going toward where whatever makes you feel comfortable but shows off your body's type at the same time. If an agent or a scouter reaches out to you first on social media, so like Instagram DM or TikTok, and you're not sure if the agent is legitimate, ask them to send you an email. The domain of the email should be @agency.com instead of like @gmail.com. At the same time, it's also a good idea to double check with the agency directly. So many times if you go on an agency website, there's a pop-up that says, some people are trying to impersonate us. If you have any questions about someone who has reached out to you, call this number or email this email. And I would highly recommend double checking from that end as well. Those were all of my tips to ensure that you stay safe as you search for agency representation. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And if you want a comprehensive guide on how to get signed as a model with no experience, this video is for you.